This video is for the number systems activity, part 1. This is question 4. So 4 starts with this idea of real versus not real numbers. And here I'm going to talk about this picture of a set of numbers in part B. The first thing for us to think about before I even get into this picture is I want to draw a different picture that gets at the idea of what's not real. So there's a set of numbers that I'm going to draw around this set that we'll call the complex numbers. And if you studied algebra or higher level math, you may remember that complex numbers look like this, where the I is the imaginary unit. So real numbers are technically part of the complex numbers, because if I have a real number, it could look like this. I could write 2 as 2 plus 0i, meaning there's no imaginary part. So the real numbers sit inside this set of complex numbers. This picture here that we're working with is the set of real numbers that we will be focused on this semester because we're focused on what elementary students should be learning. So one thing to start to look at subsets of these real numbers is that we can say that every real number is either rational or irrational. If a number's rational, it can be written as a fraction. So if it's irrational, then we can't express it as a fraction. So for example, you might remember the number pi. Pi is an irrational number. The number square root of 2 or the square root of 3, these are examples of irrational numbers. And remember that when we look at irrational numbers, if we look at their decimals, they have an infinite number of digits and they go on without a pattern. Unlike rational numbers, which can have infinite digits in their decimals, but there's a pattern. So for example, one of the rational numbers is 1/3, that's a fraction. That's 0.3 repeating. Remember, we write it with a line over this. We'll talk about this later in the semester. So we're going to be focused for the most of the semester on the rational numbers. And we're going to actually start from the natural numbers, which is this small purple zone here in this set. Natural numbers are the counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, etc. And you could think of this and think about children developmentally. Kids start learning about numbers when they learn to count objects. They start with 1 and 2 and 3, etc. Whole numbers include the natural numbers, but they add 0 into the set. So they start at 0. You could also think about this developmentally. There's a point when a child will come to understand that 0 is a number. The next set as we go out are the integers. So the integers are the wholes and their negatives. So for example, -5 is an integer. And that counts as a rational number because I could write it as -5/1. So any number that is not whole or the negative of a whole will be in this set of rational numbers, like 1/3 or 2/7 or 25/100. So those are examples of rational numbers. This semester, we're going to start with the whole numbers. That's unit 1. Then we're going to talk about rational numbers, but we'll focus on the positive rational numbers. That's unit 2. And then in unit 3, we will talk about integers.